destination, seen unclearly. What is a man deep down inside? A raging beast with nothing to hide.
Hello, my name is Rick Parrott, independent video producer. And for many years, I put on tribute rock shows here in Los Angeles with Cubensis, Southern California's premier Grateful Dead tribute band. And joining me today is the leader, Craig Marshall.
Hi, Rick.
And we're going to discuss the Grateful Dead legacy and the exploits of your band, Cubensis. Now, why do you suppose the legacy of the Grateful Dead, who go back to San Francisco, the mid-1960s, why has it endured and how has it remained appealing here in 2011?
I think it's a very unique music, and there's really nobody else playing anything like it since back in those days. That's its appeal. Plus, it's very much Americana as well. Those guys just do it right. They bring in a little bit of country, a little bit of rock and roll, a little bit of psychedelia, a little bit of jazz, and meld it together like nobody's business.
Now, how does Cubensis, your band, how does that tie into this legacy? What do you and the band offer an audience that's similar to that original Grateful Dead experience?
Well, I never had a better time than when I used to go to Grateful Dead shows. I started seeing them in 1967 at the Shrine Auditorium, Shrine Exposition Hall to be exact, in November of '67. And since then I stopped counting at 200 Grateful Dead shows, but we're trying to bring that experience back to people because I think it was just priceless, what they had to offer musically. And as far as the audience that would show up, the whole give and take that happened between the band and the audience, I don't see that in rock and roll these days. It's a very rare thing. So I wanted to, but since the Grateful Dead never hardly played in LA, at least not enough to suit us, we decided, we'd start a band, and that's really what it's all about, playing this music and keeping this music alive when some of the guys in the band aren't even with us anymore.
And what is this Grateful Dead experience? Many people have described it. When I was a young college student, and many Grateful Dead fans, they would describe it as something special. It's not just listening to a tune or maybe seeing a live concert, but there is something about the Grateful Dead experience. Can you define that or put a finger on that?
It is difficult to say because they call it you're getting on the bus, and some people don't even see the bus coming. They just, let it go right by. But somebody also said, if you have to ask, no explanation is possible. And that's pretty much where I'm at on that too. It's hard to explain, but sometimes something just touches you inside. It tickles your ears, makes you get up and dance, and makes you feel good. A lot of music does that, but there's something special about this particular type of music that it hit the spot for me and many, many others.
Well, one thing I've noticed putting on shows with you and presenting you is that there is a sense of celebration and community. That many of these fans, not only they love the music and they love your band, but they love each other and they love hanging out together. Is that sort of in the direction of defining the experience?
A lot of people refer to the shows as their church. I would say, pretty non-denominational, but they do refer to it as the experience as being in church. There's fellowship, there's a spiritual aspect to it. There's certainly the saints are there, the boys, the members of the band, not us, but the Grateful Dead, and Jerry, the big guru, the reluctant guru himself. That's experience.
Now, when did you personally experience your moment of Grateful Deadness, so to speak? Was it when you were young listening to an album? Was it seeing a poster? How did you, experience them, take them in, and what was the magic moment when you just became a Grateful Dead fan?
I'd have to explain that my folks bought me a $400 package with a cheap Italian guitar, no offense to anybody, but cheap Italian guitar and a little 10-inch amplifier. And it included free lessons up on Hawthorne Boulevard, where we were living. And I went up there and took 2 lessons from a fellow, an old hippie guy, and he said, you got to go see this band, the Grateful Dead. So I got the album and made arrangements, to go to my first show with them. But I started listening to it, and I never saw that fellow again. I stopped taking lessons, but I started listening to the leads off of the album. Fell in love with it from a guitar player perspective, because I really learned how to play guitar by slowing down the record to half speed and then picking up the leads that way. So once I saw the Dead, though, and experienced that communal thing that was going on, it was over for me. I was head over heels. I was on the bus big time.
Hooked forever.
It has been forever. It's been, well, 40 years or more seeing the Dead, 23 years of playing their music.
Now, how long did it take you to build confidence that you could play like Jerry Garcia, play his parts live in concert? I mean, that's an awful, tough act to follow, and I imagine to recreate. What was that experience like of tackling Jerry Garcia's musicianship and presenting it with your musicianship?
Well, every time I thought that I'd gotten there, I would hear a new, maybe a new live cut from the Dead or a live tape or something, where Jerry just blew my mind over again. And then I'd have to start from scratch almost and say, okay, I didn't know as much as I thought I knew about playing Garcia style or even playing guitar at all. So it's been a continuing process that goes on to this day, to the next show. I'll be learning as long as I can move my fingers, I think.
And how do you feel about the weight of supporting this legacy? I mean, he was considered a giant of music, Jerry Garcia, and here you are, live on stage many times a year, performing his guitar parts and so forth. Is that almost a burden? Do you feel like, hey, I'm carrying a torch here, and I've got to do a really good job?
I mostly feel inadequate.
Very modest of you there.
Because what with their success and also his musical genius, it is a burden. It's a lovely one to carry, though. I don't mind trying to do it at all. But as reluctant as he was to be a guru, I'm twice as reluctant. That's just not what I got into it for. I just want to play the music, have a good time, make people dance and laugh. That's it for me.
Now, what is the history behind Cubensis? It is considered Southern California's premier Grateful Dead tribute band. How was it founded and how did it develop?
Well, back in those days, after I'd seen the Dead and began to learn how to play guitar, we began to notice that the Grateful Dead hardly ever played in LA. They were down here once or twice a year if we were lucky. So we decided for our own amusement, we'd start a band just among ourselves, just a little garage band. And occasionally folks would ask us to go play a backyard party or something. And it really grew. In that way, somebody said, hey, there's a club over here that wants a band on Tuesdays. You guys interested? We'd go over there and play, first for free, and then charge a couple bucks. And then another club, a festival, and it would just grow. And, now we're still doing the very same thing. We're doing it a lot more successfully and with a lot more technical proficiency. I think the band right now is just pristine musically and as musicians. Also, our rapport together when we're playing, the ESP that goes on between musicians is way up there right now. I can nod or just give one of my counterparts a look, and they'll know, okay, we're going to shift gears here. We're going to go this way. And it's very easy to steer the good ship Cubensis these days.
And what is your current gig schedule? You're quite popular. You have a number of residency gigs where you play all the time, and then you do get a travel schedule now and again. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, yeah. We've become known for our residencies. For instance, we played in Santa Monica at a club called 14 Below for 8 years, every Sunday. So we do have residencies now at the Central in Santa Monica. Plus, most weekends you'll find us maybe at the House of Blues or the Lighthouse or, clubs around town. And we do occasionally tour. Also, we'll go up north, Vegas, Arizona dates. My other plans are to start writing original songs for the band. My idea is that the band plays well enough together that I think we could get away with, a couple dozen originals that are Deadish, but our own music. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
And as I understand it, you have had a personal meeting with Jerry Garcia, and you've also had various members of the Grateful Dead who have, guest spotted with you here and there, and jammed with you, and been a special performer with you for an evening. So tell us about that experience. About here you are recreating the music, but you didn't meet the original guy, the guru as you called him, Jerry Garcia. How'd that go?
We're going to see the Grateful Dead and Little Feat at the University of Oregon at Autzen Stadium. And our plane stopped in San Francisco, and there was Jerry Garcia in the gift shop. So my girlfriend at the time went up and got an autograph and gave him a big hug, and he was glad to oblige her. I said to myself, well, I'm not going to bother the man. You know, he probably gets a lot of people coming up and bugging him. But I said, you know what? Might not get another chance. You never know. So I did go up, introduced myself, and thanked him for all the good years of music. I said I played in a band called Cubensis, and he got the sly reference to the magic mushroom that our name entails. And then I said, we play all Grateful Dead music. And he said, with mock surprise, oh yeah, so do we. So I was blown away by that statement. And then we laughed about it, both of us, but because he's obviously joking. Then we talked shop about his effects and stuff. About that time, though, I began to realize who I was talking to. And I'm talking to the man here. And everything he was saying was just going over my head, all the technical, juicy tidbits that I could have picked up from him, in one ear and out the other. I did ask him the important question. How do you feel about us playing your music? He said to me, as long as you do a good job of it, do it. And so to this day, I think we're doing a good job of it, and nobody can tell me otherwise.
And you have also had the experience of different members of the Grateful Dead actually doing guest spots with you and so forth. Who have you played with?
Strangely enough, it was both keyboardists. Both TC, Tom Constantin, sat in with us, and then Vince Welnick, who was the Dead's keyboardist from 90 to 95 to the end of their career, during a 3-year period did a lot of touring with us, which was a wonderful experience because he brought with him a lot of stories, of tour stories and that sort of thing, and how things really were backstage, all that kind of stuff, and how they approached the music a little bit. And he would actually teach us a couple of songs that we didn't even have in our repertoire at the time. So I just remember how great it would be to hear Vince's voice coming out of our monitors. It was like, is this really happening? But he was an amazing musician and one of the happiest guys I've ever met.
Well, finally, Cubensis and the Grateful Dead, what are your predictions for the legacies of both bands to endure?
Well, so far, at this point, we've played more shows than the Grateful Dead ever played. We're past 3,000 shows, so we're nothing stopping us yet. We're continuing to play. The Grateful Dead people will still be listening to the Dead 200 years from now, 300 years from now. I think their music is that intricate, that interesting, and it's something you can really wade into and get deeply into. It's not superficial music by any means. And I think it represents this whole 40-year era as far as what was happening in America, what made people feel good during this time, what gave them an escape. That's what I get out of it, and I think that, people 200 years from now are going to say, this rocks.
Well, let's hope so. Craig Marshall, I want to thank you very much for joining in this conversation here. Rick Parrott, independent video producer with Craig Marshall, leader of the Grateful Dead tribute band, Cubensis, Southern California's premier product when it comes to that Grateful Dead music. So I hope you guys have a long, strange trip, just like the Dead did, and thanks for joining us here.
Mama told me, Papa done told me too. Mama